Welcome to the God 20 video. Well, how time flies when you're not having fun. Come a long way. To set the theme for this video, which is going to be pretty much a recap and a reflection on the first 20 in the series, I just want to read out a comment from a listener who sent this in the other week because I think it sets the tone nicely. He said, I can't wrap my head around how anyone could not be deeply passionate about the nature of consciousness, reality, and the bigger questions of who and where we truly are, how we got here, and what comes after this experience. To stop at a religious or scientific belief system and never look any further feels limiting. This should be at the very forefront of life itself. The question that every single human being carries within them, whether they realize it or not. And when you look around in society and you see people whose first concern is what team their football crowd is playing this weekend, or what they're going to have for tea tonight, or what they need to get from Lidl when they do the shopping, it really beggars belief that people don't consider these bigger questions, rather bigger, about what this life is in the first place, who we are, what we're doing here. And I think that's going to set the tone for the discussion I have today. Now, I've got a guest with me for the ride, and there are very few people I feel I can reach out to who are kind of aligned with my current viewpoint on things. Very, very few, which is why I don't tend to have guests on this series. There are people that ask these big questions, but I'm not necessarily aligned with their conclusions on it. And really, I just want to have discussions that advance some of the perspectives that I've presented over the course of the previous 20 videos. So I've got with me today my good friend Nathan Lucius. Welcome along, brother.
Hello, mate. You all right?
Well, that question's banned. Remember, we
Wait,
don't we don't do that one.
it's the one question that we both say to people, never ask us that question. Yeah, I always seem to do it with you for some reason. It's like you're the exception to the rule of the exception to the rules. It's weird. It's bizarre.
Well, it just shows
So,
how we're conditioned in society to ask that question. It's just such a natural thing. We've done it all
just a
our
bit.
lives. You meet somebody, it's like, "How are you?" And first of all, if they're not doing too well and they say, "Oh, terrible, I've had this problem and this has been going on this week," most people aren't particularly interested in that kind
Yeah.
of answer. They want to hear you say, "Oh, I'm doing fine." And if you're not doing fine, sometimes you feel like lying and saying, "Yeah, yeah, I'm fine." And what's the point of that then if you've just lied to your friend, you know?
So, well, I'm a bit weird. I mean, as you and your listeners who've heard me before probably guessed, because whenever somebody does ask me that question, I'll tell them the truth, and they wish they'd never asked. So I mean, I could do the whole, yeah, I'm fine, it's great, all's wonderful, but I'm also of the opinion that if you're going to ask somebody a question, at least be ready for the answer. I mean,
That's right.
so
So you
uh,
better mean the question.
yeah. So as for how are we?
Well, we're
Uh,
here.
We're here, yeah. I mean, how good can we be living in a dystopia? I mean, it's a bit toxic at the minute, isn't it? Really, life and existence, reality. So, yeah, it's challenging.
It is a
So,
bit of a challenge. And towards the end of this, as is customary with these videos, I'm going to read out some feedback, some comments that people
oh,
have
that'd be
left
good.
under the
Yeah,
YouTube videos. And I'm getting some really great feedback these days. And this is a good reflection on how far this series has come, because I know that you'll well remember when I put out my first video in
I
January of
do.
2024,
Yeah.
I titled it, Is God Really Good?
Yep.
And it was a deliberately provocative title, to be fair. And it did trigger quite a few people. I got a lot of uh, mail feedback that was quite negative and not supportive, shall we say. And certain people just seemed to find it outrageous and blasphemous and a form of heresy that I'd even asked the question.
Yeah.
But I think I raised some valid points. And it was all questions, to be fair. I wasn't claiming to have the answers about anything. And so for the first couple of videos, a lot of pissed off people were getting in touch with me and they were calling me all kinds of names, accusing me of being a Satanist or whatever. Kind of used to that. But I
Yeah.
noticed that by the time I was maybe 7 or 8 videos in, the tone of the feedback was starting to change and I was starting to get a lot more support. And we're now at 20, or the last one was 19. And I would say 90% of the feedback I get now is supportive. And it's people who are aligned with my perspectives and my points of view. And they're coming with some really great comments of their own, which I read out in the feedback section. And so many people are saying this is great that we've all kind of found each other and we can have these kinds of discussions, because prior to uh, this year, there wasn't really anyone you could talk to about this stuff. But it seems more and more people
Yeah.
are starting to ask these questions, and more people are looking at the evidence around them and using a scientific method of truth discernment and coming to similar conclusions to each other. So
Yeah.
that's a notable shift over the course of the past 20 months or so.
Well, okay. First of all, I mean, well done. I mean, so this is like a not an anniversary video, but it's like a Hallmark video, maybe 20 episodes.
That kind of thing. I mean, it's not a party really,
Oh,
but
come on, it could be party. Well,
it's the
anyway,
closest we get to a party.
but I don't know. I mean, I think you've done well to I mean, you've two series on the go. Maybe well, you've got a few more depending on what time of year it is, I guess. But well done on that. But for people's reactions to the video, and for people's reactions to, let's say, the anti-God rhetoric. So I don't even think it's fair to say anti-God, because I'm not anti-God. I'm not, I'm not pro-evil or anything like that, and you're not either. So it's not like we're saying this because we want to attack God or we want to attack goodness. I think it's just a lot of people are conditioned. Well, we know a lot of people are conditioned, right? And part of the conditioning is religion. Religion has done a massive amount of mind control and behavioral modification over the years, I would say, since day one. So I think since civilization formed, we've been under heavy mind control by people who wish to keep us under the thumb, keep us in a state of fear, so that we are easier to manipulate and fall in line with their agendas, right? So religion to me is the primary way of doing that. If you can get somebody's primal fear, which is what happens to us after death, why are we here, what happens if we don't align ourselves with government or state, or what happens if we go against the priest or the priestess that's running the temple, then if they can get people in that state of mind control, and it is mind control, and you can control their behaviors, you can then create the laws based on the back of that. Um, what effectively has happened, especially with your videos and a few others like you, is that you've now started to question uh, effectively a 2,000, 3,000 year old narrative, depending on which culture we're dealing with here, and basically say, well, look, there's many parts of this that don't make sense. There's bits of this that are contradictory. There's bits of this that look more like demon worship and demonology than worshiping a benevolent God who's got our best interests at heart, right? And so again, I don't want to take this down a negative slant. I think we've had too much of that in the last couple of years for obvious reasons. Anyone with their eyes open at the minute would understand why people are negative, and we're in a bad state of being. But um, it's not about attacking religion. It's not about attacking Christianity. It's simply about looking into it. It's about observing it. It's about finally having a platform worldwide where people can share their information, can share their findings and their observations. And more information is getting out there. We're becoming more and more familiar with Christianity, especially. I mean, it's a massive subject on things like YouTube. I mean, you can find lots of for and against. You can find lots of critics on there, lots of former believers that are now starting to question the narrative. You've got people who've been, trained in seminars sorry, not seminars, seminaries that have come out and said, well, actually, yeah, there's things that we've been told not to say, not to talk about. There's certain things you don't question. We've got professors like Bart Ehrman saying, well, actually, if you look into this, it's very contradictory, very hypocritical, and it's not even moral. What you've been told about your religion is not even moral. So in a long-winded way of answering the question there, Mark, I think what you've done as well as everyone else is you've had the courage to question that, to observe it, to use your own critical thinking and say, well, hang on a minute, what we've been told since childhood, since I mean, I used to go to church and I used to go to a religious school where they, we'd have assembly every day and prayers and hymns and all the rest of it. That's indoctrination too. All we've done now is use the information that's available to us and the networks that we've been able to build online to say, well, hang on, that's not true, or there's a little bit of a problem with this. And so I applaud anyone for doing that, and I applaud you for doing that, because I think it's a necessary step forward. Does that answer your question a bit?
Yeah, well,
I hope so.
these aren't comfortable subjects, obviously, and
Mm,
it's caused me a fair bit of disturbance and a few
yeah,
sleepless nights looking into this stuff. But in correspondence that I've had with people who've seen the videos, we're kind of in agreement that it is worth investing the time to study these subjects in these lifetimes, because maybe arming ourselves with this knowledge and this wisdom is the key to getting out of here. And those of us that don't
Yeah.
like this place and don't particularly want to have to come back or just want to get out of it,
Right.
for us, that kind of information, if it's valid, is like gold. Because I'll take any method of getting out of this bloody madhouse and never having to come back. And I think we need to make a distinction here also, just to pick up on something you said there, that
Mm.
when I talk about the God of this realm, I'm
Yeah.
not talking about the original generative creative force in nature.
Exactly. I agree with
Clearly,
that.
clearly something created us.
Yes.
Uh, According to the Gnostic viewpoint, which I'm very much aligned with. I
Yeah.
don't claim to be a Gnostic because I don't adhere to religious systems per se, but I think they had a pretty good appreciation of the dynamics that go on in this realm. And according to them, we are what they described as divine sparks. So we're individuated aspects of the original creative force, or
Yeah.
individuated units of God, if you like, the real God. The gods of the Old Testament in the Bible, for example, and most other religious texts, is what they refer to as the demiurge or Yaldabaoth is
Yes.
the name they put on it.
Yeah.
And this is not a god, it's a usurper, it's an intruder, a pretender, it's a demon, basically. It's a extremely flawed, arrogant, violent, psychopathic monstrosity and
Yes.
abomination of creation. And this entity is what we've been entrained to look up to and praise and revere as a god. That's the God I'm opposed to. I don't worship that thing in any
Well,
way.
choice words, Mark. I mean, I know we've both had a rant at that particular entity, using some very interesting language, I
So
think.
when we scream at God that it's a four-letter word, we're not
Mm.
talking about the original God and the creator of all things. I do recognize that force.
As do
And
I. Yeah.
I mean, if we don't have that, it's an extremely bleak and nihilistic viewpoint, right? And it's not as
Isn't
if
it?
I'm forcing myself to accept that that force is there. My logic and everything I've seen around me tells me that it is. And somehow this Yaldabaoth thing was allowed to usurp this reality and create this
Yeah.
place and put us in it. However, we got here, whether we were tricked or trapped or coerced in some way, we find ourselves in it. So that's what we're opposed to. We're not opposed to original God.
Right. Okay. I absolutely agree. By the way, can you hear me all right? Is the
Yeah,
mic
yeah,
loud
fine,
enough? Right.
fine.
That's brilliant. I absolutely agree. Again, to me, this is just calling out what I see as something has gone wrong, right? So whether you want to call this, I mean, people, David Icke, for example, he calls this a bad copy of reality, right? And I think again that could be bang on the mark. I think the Gnostic accounts of some kind of demon, well, maybe it's not a demon, maybe it is a god, small god that was malformed, as it's says in some of the Gnostic Gospels, about basically Sophia not forming the earth properly because she didn't have the masculine aspect there, and maybe that's gone a bit
Oh, these
awry.
women, eh?
Oh,
Sorry, joke,
I can't
joke,
bloody
joke,
say
joke.
now. I can't.
Just a joke,
um,
ladies.
I, but it's again, are we dealing with a malformed god that is genuinely kind of a creator, but is not? It's not balanced, right? Is it jealous? Is it a jealous god that's created um, a planet and a race of beings that it just wants to control or just wants to toy with. It's maybe this Yaldabaoth, this Yahweh, demiurge, whatever you want to call it. Maybe it's just trying to figure out what's what by using us as an experiment, And there's that way of looking at it. I mean, it's certainly, if we take the Old Testament as an example, we're not dealing with a benevolent creative force. We are not dealing with a forgiving God. We're not dealing with a compassionate, loving God that wishes to pour out its love upon its subjects. We are dealing with something very cold, very dark, very psychopathic, and very malevolent. And if anybody, any Christians still listening, and I hope there are a few. Again, look, this is not an attack on you. This is not an attack on the scriptures. Even I enjoy reading the Bible. It's fantastic. However, be honest with yourselves, and you tell me that's setting a good example of morality and goodness. If you read through this, especially the Torah, especially the first five books, my God, the stuff that's in there, just God commanding that his chosen people go out and slaughter masses and masses of people, women, children, animals, that he demands sacrifices, he demands, burnt offerings. Um, Come on, that's neither good nor moral. And if that's supposed to be setting the example as to how we're supposed to live today, then good job. We've got a whole worldwide society that is ripping itself apart, whether that be through war, famine, tyranny, fraud, deception. I mean, okay, good job. If you want to use that as the example of as to how to live on this planet, yeah, you've done a great job. You've done it. Getting back to the creative force, a benevolent force. Yeah, I don't think that Yahweh, Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, whatever, however you want to refer to the Gnostic version of the Christian God, I don't think that is the overall creative force. And I'm not saying either that I agree with everything in the Gnostic Gospels. I just think it's definitely food for thought, and it's a philosophical body of work that we can now take and say, well, actually, that does make more sense than the narrative that we've all adhered to all these years. It just, to me, I mean, again, I've not read all the Gnostic Gospels. I've got 2 minutes. I've got a rather big volume behind me. There's quite a lot of stuff in there. So this is effectively the bits of the Bible that were lost or that they tried to cover up and remove forcibly so that it didn't counteract the narrative. And there's a lot of other gospels in there. There's a lot of other creation stories in there. I've not managed to get through all of them, but what I will say about the Gnostic Gospels is they make a hell of a lot more sense to me. It's a lot more rational. It's a lot more grounded. It's a lot more loving. I mean, the God that the Jesus in the Gnostic Gospels is referring to is a compassionate God, but he's equally saying that is not the God of your forefathers. But the God that I'm preaching is not that God. I'm not talking about Yahweh. There is another creative force. God is within you, right? There is a creative divine spark within you, and you've got to change your outlook. You've got to change your perceptions in order to understand that, which means letting go of the old beliefs, dislodging those old dogmas, and opening yourself up to a more spiritual outlook. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, I've gone round and round a bit there, so I apologize for that.
Yeah, no worries. The infuriating thing for me is just the
Yeah,
fact that we find ourselves abandoned here with no
does
roadmap,
feel like that.
no guidebook.
Yeah,
There are no
yeah.
clear answers. I mean, people will tell you they've got all the answers. Religious leaders and new age
Hmm.
spiritual types will claim, "Oh, I've figured it out, and this is what we're doing here, and this is what this creation is." But none of
Yeah.
us really know.
D-
And how is that of any benefit to us? If these
right.
lives were created to enrich our souls so that we can grow and evolve, as certain people tell us, learn lessons,
Yeah.
take it back to source, pool all that knowledge that we've accumulated, uh, how does any of that work when we come in with a mind wipe? If we've had previous lives, then
Hmm.
we come
Yeah.
in with our minds wiped, so we have no memory of it. And yet we're supposed to learn cumulatively. And some people will say we have lives beyond these and we take that knowledge forward. How? How do you do
Yeah.
that with a mind wipe? What's the point of putting us here with no roadmap, with a million conflicting arguments? This religious leader saying my faith is the correct one, everyone else is wrong.
Yeah.
The very next person saying, no, no, don't listen to him. He's a charlatan. My faith is right. How are you supposed to make sense of any of that?
Well,
How
you
is any of
can't,
that
can
for
you?
our benefit?
Well, again, if you've got a million conflicting views, then the one thing that you don't have is unity. You haven't got cohesion, right?
Mm.
So I mean, the word religion means to bind back, right? To rebind. As Mark Passio would say, it's to hold you back from progress, right? It's to hold your mind in a vice-like grip, to stop you from having a healthy outlook at the rest of the world and genuinely questioning everything and seeing from a spiritual philosophical standpoint what you can make of the world. But we're taught by religion, by churches, by all these dogmatic systems of belief. No, you must believe what we tell you. If you think outside of that box, you're evil or you're a sinner or you're a wrongdoer. So don't do that. Well, that's limiting us, right? That's limiting our outlook into I think it has held us back. I think it's held us back thousands of years because we've just not been able to escape that grip of church doctrine and of not just church temple doctrine. Take it as far back as you like. Um, you know, I think you and I have mentioned like holographic theory, matrix theory on many occasions, as to just trying to understand what this place is, because again, it doesn't make sense to me. There are anomalies here. I mean, deja vu for one. How do you explain that if it's not a matrix? How that's just one of many things for me. But if if we're supposed to learn from this, if we're supposed to be good moral people of upstanding character, if we're supposed to have peace on the earth, then exactly what you said there. Why bring us in with a mind wipe? Why are we not allowed to remember? If we're supposed to learn lessons, how can you do that from a perspective of, right, you've been a naughty boy, you've made 350,000 mistakes in the previous lifetime, so now you have to go back and correct all of those mistakes, but we're going to wipe your memory again, as well as everyone else's memories, and then you're going to make 350,000 more mistakes. Some of them you might correct, but then you're going to make a whole, slay of new ones. That doesn't make sense to me either. I know Christians don't necessarily go for the whole karmic consequences of reincarnation. That's fine, even though some versions of the older Christianity and Gnostics do have a karmic reincarnation belief in certain ways. But yeah, it doesn't make sense to me that. To me, and again, look, I'll try and put a positive on this as well, because I don't want to leave people feeling all down and depressed. I mean, we've had 5 years of that worldwide. I don't think we need any more. But a lot of people are suffering. All right, a lot of people don't know what they're doing anymore. A lot of people haven't got direction or purpose anymore. They are walking around aimlessly now, unhappy, poor. Well, not everyone's poor, but struggling with family, struggling with money, struggling with health. If if we did have a benevolent God, a benevolent creator that truly wanted us to be happy, right? First of all, it would show us the way. It would set us out guidelines and a roadmap. There would be something to adhere to that didn't contradict itself, that did make sense, that didn't necessarily turn you away from what felt right. Right. I mean, a lot of what Mark Passio talks about in regards to natural law is, if you are a moral, upstanding human being, if you stick to principle, if you know the difference between right and wrong, and believe me, folks, it's really not that difficult. When you look into it, and you get an understanding of right and wrong. It's not that difficult. You know, does it cause an act of harm? Right. Well, yes. If it causes an act of harm, is it a deliberate act of harm? Then it's wrong, isn't it? It's that's the simple. If it's not a wrong, then it's a right. And people can't seem to get their heads around that. Going back to the idea of a construct, a matrix, and a benevolent God, if we had that, if we genuinely had that, then those simple understandings of right and wrong, or simple guidelines of what is acceptable and what's not, that would cut out cruelty. That would cut, I mean, people would be more charitable for one thing, right? Because they'd want to set the example. I just think at the minute humanity's gone massively, massively astray, and I don't necessarily think we can blame God for that. I mean, God, the creative force. This is the work of deceptive men. This is the work of tyrants and kings that wanted to usurp the world, and have done it. And now they've got AI to take over from their, I mean, the AI is now effectively the new God because it's been programmed to take over from that position.
Hmm.
Oh, that
Yeah.
helps. Yeah.
There was a time where I attended a Christian church about 30 odd years ago.
Yeah.
And I would have thought that anyone having this type of discussion, questioning the nature of God and calling God a tyrant and a psychopath, I would have
Yeah.
thought that I'd go straight to hell for that. There would be literally hell to pay.
Well,
And that
it is
gives
a
it,
hell state.
yeah.
I mean, again, sorry to interrupt there, but I mean, isn't hell? It's a state of mind. Hell is a state of mind. Heaven is a state of mind. It's not a place up there or down there. Even if you go by the scriptures themselves, they don't talk about heaven and hell.
Hmm.
They talk about a state of heaven and a state of hell. And at the minute, the world collectively is in a state of hell. Right? We are going through misery and suffering and pain. Personally, I'd like to stop that. So sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. I just want to
Well,
get
you
that
mentioned
in.
there a loving God might want peace on earth and might
Mhm.
actually want there to be abundance and happiness
Yeah,
and joy. How is that ever going to be achieved when we have a natural world, the so called food chain,
yeah,
where billions of living sentient beings murder each other in horrific, violent ways
Yeah.
every single day just to stay alive another
Yeah.
day. I think that state of affairs tells you everything you need to know about the true nature of whatever created this realm and its motives. Pain, suffering, and death are built into the very fabric of this reality.
Yeah.
So, how can we ever expect to attain human joy, human freedom, when all that is going on and is a central part of this very
Yeah.
reality? Right? I
So
think it's
this
all
this
right
is
there in that.
well, I mean, I know you asked this question. I think you ask it of all your guests, and it's a very good question. I think
I
it's
do,
one
and
that
I
we need
never
to
get a
cover.
satisfactory answer. I never get an answer that makes any kind of sense to me, other than it's the creation of a psychopath.
Well, okay, all right. Well, let's devil's advocate then. No pun intended. All right. Um, I've got to be careful with my words here because certain communities don't like the idea of evolution, whereas I do, but with certain caveats in place. Let's assume that this is let's go with the atheist mindset, right? The atheist mindset is that the universe came into being. Now they've changed their minds. Apparently now it's not the Big Bang; it's always been here. Okay, whatever. Life has evolved from a state of primordial being and the primordial soup. Right? Okay, take that. Well, I'm not saying it isn't. It isn't. What I'm saying is just conceptualize for a moment. Okay, from that perspective, the idea of survival of the fittest, the idea that there's cycles, there's ecological cycles. One animal has to prey on another, has to prey on another, has to prey on another, and there's a food chain involved in that, just to be able to survive. All right, from that perspective, it kind of makes sense. It's cold, and it's quite a heartless position to be in. Again, I'm not, this is not an attack on atheists. I agree with a lot of things they say, even though I'm not an atheist. However, from that perspective, the idea of that cruelty and suffering as part of the food chain, as part of the ecological cycle, that would make sense from that perspective. From the perspective of a creative force that has, you know, orchestrated everything. I see this as there's a divine code intertwined into everything. Now, maybe that has been usurped by Yaldabaoth or Yaldo, as we prefer to call him sometime, as if he's our old buddy. There is a code enshrined in nature, and you can see it everywhere. And unfortunately, that does it's like a necessary system of suffering. Um, you
It's
know,
not necessary, though, is it? That's the point. There's
well,
so many
no,
other
no, but
ways, so many other ways this reality could have been
yeah,
constructed without the need for even digestive systems
yeah,
and the need to
yes,
ingest food. Why can't we just
yeah.
live on prana, air?
I
It
mean,
could
some people
it
have
could have
tried
been
that.
that way. If we're talking about a god that could have created any kind of reality it wanted,
Yeah,
there's an option. Why did it have to be this one?
yeah. I mean, right, okay. Take the idea of balance. I mean, I know that we've both questioned this, and in terms of the karmic balance, and there's a dark and a light, and there's a cosmic balance. I genuinely think there is, just maybe not the one that we want at the minute. Um, so I'm going somewhere with this. Bear with me. If we had genuine harmony, so let's say all the species on Earth, if they didn't need to feed off each other, if they didn't need to hide from prey and predators and things like that, if they could live harmoniously, do we suspect that a balance would occur naturally? Do we think that species numbers would balance out and then it would just replenish when sort of like numbers were depleted? Without another species keeping that in check, for example. I mean, is that something that it's possible, is feasible? Do you see where I'm going with that? It's like, is it possible that if we didn't feast on each other, that we could just balance out naturally and have paradise on earth, have that Garden of Eden concept where everything just worked, everything was peaceful, and we had solitude, and we could just live in harmony with nature. I mean, that'd be bliss. That'd be ideal. I'd
If
love
the
that.
creator had wanted that, it could have
Hmm.
had it. Because if you're
Yeah,
omniscient and omnipotent and
yeah,
all knowing, you can create any kind of existence you
yeah.
want. So that was an option, but that option was not chosen. The one
It
that we
doesn't
do
seem to
have
be.
was.
No, I mean, all right. Take gorillas. Right, I like gorillas. I think they're lovely animals, but they're vegetarians. Right? I mean, we've got this big, literally big friendly giant in the jungle, right? And it'll defend its own. It's got muscular torso and physique. It's strong. Had it not been for humans interfering with that particular dynamic hunting them, then they would be in abundance, but they'd also be in balance. They wouldn't be everywhere. They kept themselves in check. The flora and fauna in the rainforest has kept itself in check largely. I mean, does it need all these predators necessarily? Why is it that one of the greatest predators on Earth, a gorilla, is a vegetarian, and yet it it survives well enough without having to, you know, take down the species lower in the food chain? Does that,
Plus
we could
elephants. I
do
think
that.
elephants are vegetarians.
Elephants as well. So is that not a lesson to be learned from that? So we've got two giants in the natural order, two giants, and both of them vegetarian. Both of them don't feel the need to to go and feast on and digest other animal species to promulgate themselves, to push themselves further up the food chain. I don't know. Again, is this part of a divine, well, I'll say divine code from a demiurge? Is it some malevolent encoding? Again, I'm not claiming to know all the answers here. I like to philosophize. I like to ask these questions. And like yourself, I've been attacked for simply asking questions. I've been attacked for pointing things out in scripture that, I've had Christians come to me and saying, yeah, well, it's that way. And I've pointed out, well, no, it's not. It doesn't even say that. You've just cherry picked it, or your preacher has given you a certain narrative and you believe that bit because you haven't balanced it out with the bits they're not telling you. So again, with the idea that life is suffering, I think the Buddhists got that one nailed. I mean, they called that one very early out, didn't they? Life is suffering. They've got the Eightfold Noble Path, and even that discloses morality and stuff like that. I don't think there is a satisfactory answer to your question, is what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Again, in a very long-winded way, the answer as to why is there suffering in the ecological cycles? My best answer to that, and again, it's not the one that you like, is that it's part of an evolutionary cycle. And again, I look at evolution. I still think that evolution works well with the divine code. It still works well with the creator. I just look at that differently. So people take that as you will. I'm not meaning to offend. I know that goes against the grain, but there are other ways of looking at things that, there are other ways of looking at this. Do I like it? Do I like that suffering? No, I'd much prefer the whole paradise concept where everything is in balance and harmony. We don't have to. I mean, can you imagine if we didn't have to eat? Can you imagine the
I do think about that.
all?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, right. Okay, free up time. I mean, okay, where you're going to get your nutrients from, where you're going to get your rest from. Okay, I get that. I understand it's food is fuel and we need exercise for growth. Right, I get that. But let's say that there's another way of obtaining that. Let's say that was just built into us from day one, right? And we didn't need food. We could be much more productive. And yet let's apply that to the rest of the animal kingdom. If they didn't need to do that either, then there'd be no need for predators and prey, would there?
Right.
There's no need for that.
And if I may be crude for a moment, I asked, what's the point of a digestive system? Also, what's the point of needing to excrete waste? It's disgusting. Animals feed on each
It
other.
is, I know.
The bodies of these animals, the corpses, go through a
Yeah,
digestive system and then they get shat out at the other end.
yeah,
And that's a pretty uh, uh, unpleasant
dire.
end to that creature's life. And, we take in
Yeah,
food and we have to go to the toilet and it's disgusting. It's
yeah.
horrible. It's unsanitary. Why is it necessary? It was never
Right.
necessary.
I mean,
Why?
it's messy as well. I mean,
What kind of all-knowing, all-loving, all-seeing,
yeah,
benevolent entity would design a human body that is prone to disease? It ages,
yeah,
it withers away and decays and dies eventually, and you have to go through all the trauma of that, watching your loved ones waste away before it happens to
yeah.
you, and having to go to the toilet every day. None of this was necessary. None of it.
Well, look at the infrastructure required just to take care of that. I mean, even in medieval times, and prehistoric times, you had to have cesspits, which would then spread disease and all kinds of nasty side effects to that. And plus, it stinks. It's messy. It's again, look, I know if there's atheists and people and scientists watching this, will say, yeah, well, that's a necessary part of evolution or the necessary part of the cycle of life. Yeah, I get that. When we're just philosophizing at this point, but yeah, I mean, it is such it's a pain. You could argue that we need that for the soil, and the soil, and you could argue that, right? So the trees and the vegetation feed off of that as well. So they feed off our waste. But another way of looking at this is, and I said this to somebody the other day, and it was like, "Are you for real?" It's like if people watch all these food videos, and they do all this food prep, and I'm just watching it thinking it's a very interesting way of preparing shit, isn't it? I mean, it's just going to come out. I mean, if you're preparing it all nice and fancy, and you're putting it on the tables and all of this stuff, and it's basically just very fanciful, very tasty, inevitable shit. And I
That's
mean,
the
sorry,
obscene thing
that
about
is
it. If you
crude, but
if you
yeah,
think of an animal that goes to an abattoir,
yeah,
just think of all the
yeah,
pain and suffering and fear that animal experiences. It will get, if we're talking about a cow, it'll get made into steaks or beef or whatever, and it will go
yeah,
into supermarkets. Within a few days, all that animal's body would have gone through digestive systems, been shat out, gone
yeah,
into the sewer. You know, that animal's life is
yeah,
worth that. That's what that animal's life amounted to in the end. Shit in a sewer.
yeah. Well, I mean, again, if we're looking at it from that perspective, I mean, again, I've contemplated all this, I've considered all of this, and it's not a very nice way of looking at things, but I mean, it that's what it is. I mean, let's say it for what it is. That's exactly what happens. But if you just look at the whole idea of eating, I mean, I'm not a vegetarian. I know you are. I think you're vegan. Are you still vegan, or is it just vegetarian at the minute?
Lapsed vegan.
Flaps vegan. Okay, we'll go with that. So okay, well, I'm not, but obviously, I respected, whenever you've come here, and I've always tried to cater to that. I don't like consuming animals. I don't like the idea that we butcher these animals, we portion them up, and then we present them and we flame grill them, or we put them in flavorings and stuff like that. I mean, it's butchery. I mean, it's a horrible concept if you think about it. When you go into a restaurant, or we are literally parceling off bits of animal. If if you look at that for what it is, you're effectively murdering en masse constantly, just to keep a species um, economically satisfied, and satisfied in their bellies. And I don't know, there's something doesn't add up. And yet there's studies that have been done with vegans and vegetarians, which says that certain people who are vegan and vegetarian, they're getting ill because they're not acquiring the nutrients from meat. Again, this is not me saying this. I'm just saying that there have been studies done where certain people, certain body types, have found it necessary to have meat. Now, some people can do without that, but it seems cruel that we have to then butcher animals in order for our very own survival. I mean, it's not a very kind
Hmm,
way of living, is it?
Not kind
I
at
feel
all.
like I'm prattling on at this point, but I think you get
That's
my
not
point
kind at
there.
all. And people do seem to have different body types. And there's a well-worn phrase which goes, one man's meat is another man's poison. And
Right.
it seems to be
Right.
saying that no two people are alike in terms of what
Yeah.
they need and what they like and the way they operate.
Yeah.
So I've been vegetarian for 35 years
Wow. Okay.
with no, 37 years. It's 37 years now
Hmm.
with no health problems whatsoever. I did go vegan for about 7 or 8 years. I've slipped a little bit on that, but I didn't experience any problems at all. However, I know other people who claim that they've gone on a vegan diet and they've
Hmm.
got extremely ill, and the only way
Yeah.
they could nurse themselves back to health is by going back on meat. So, what's that all about? It
I
seems
mean,
that there's not a hard and fast rule that applies to everyone. We have different body types, different
yeah.
digestive systems, different metabolisms.
I mean,
Makes no
there's
sense.
the concept of different. Well, you just said it there, that different body types require different, diets. I mean, certain people can thrive on white meat, whereas to other people that can have a detrimental effect. Certain people thrive better on red meat, than it can make them feel energetic. Now, again, that doesn't apply to everyone. Some vegetarians and vegans thrive. I went through a period in my, I'm going to call it early awakening. If I don't like that word, as anybody who's familiar with me would know, I don't like the word awakening, but in those early stages, I cut down on a lot of things. You know, I went the healthy route, and one of the things I did through the week was to cut out all meat. So if I prepared myself a meal, it would be um vegetarian, not vegan, but it'd be vegetarian. And one of the things I noticed from that is my energy levels went through the roof. I felt more alive. I felt more energetic. I felt there was just more vitality there. There was more vibrancy to it. And then if I but equally, if I go out at the weekends to have a meal out and I ate meat, I'd feel sluggish. I'd feel it would I hate to sound like a new ager, but it would bring my vibration down, right? It would bring that, it would slow me down. And I'm thinking, well, okay, maybe there is something to vegetarianism. If it gives you that level of energy, you know, then why not? But again, if it makes some people ill, maybe look into it, maybe find out what your blood type is and your body type is, and see if you're compatible with that kind of diet. One thing I don't agree with is when you get the meat eaters arguing with the vegetarians, saying, "Oh, well, you're not going to get your protein if you don't eat your meat." Well, that's bollocks, isn't it? You've got beans and pulses, you've got certain fruits and vegetables that are full of protein. I mean, broccoli's full of protein, so that argument's thrown out straight away. You know?
Well, you've touched on something there. Meat
Oh,
eaters clearly don't want to give up their eating habits.
right.
They like eating meat.
Hmm.
So they will justify it in any way they can to
Yeah.
continue doing what they do because they don't want to have to change. And I think it's the same thing with these God questions.
Yeah.
It's very
Absolutely.
uncomfortable for people to even entertain the idea that this place was created by not a loving, benevolent
Yeah.
God, but a malevolent one. And it was created for suffering and all the rest of it. That's a
Yeah.
horrific prospect for many people to entertain. So they come up with all kinds of ways of avoiding that question. They hide behind religious systems, they hide behind New Age spiritual belief systems.
Yeah.
They do all kinds of mental gymnastics and dancing around to avoid having to face up to this very awkward question.
Yeah. Just a bit.
People just create these diversions because it's
Excuses.
too,
Uh,
yeah, they're
let's go for
excuses.
let's call it for what it is. It's excuse making, isn't it?
Right, right. Yeah.
Can I bring something else up then? It ties into all this. I've been doing a lot of research. So I'm in the process of updating my existing book and writing a new one that goes with it. And a lot of what the subject area is basically psychology and morality largely. All right. And I've been looking at people's behaviors, especially in the last 3 or 4 years. There has been a massive change in people's behaviors, especially within, and you're gonna have to forgive me for saying this, the truth movement, which is neither dealing with the truth or moving at the minute. So, but anyway, I wanted to see what's holding us back. I want to see what's causing the social problems that we're having. Why is it that the social engineers have now got us in a grip, right? They are controlling our thoughts, our actions, and our behaviors. So I wanted to see what the cause of that was. So that led me into the subject of mind traps and cognitive biases, which is fascinating. And again, for anybody who's not familiar with those two terms, go and blow your minds. And it's fascinating. I mean, obviously, anyone who studies psychology, they're probably aware of this. But anyone who hasn't, if you've got if you want the truth, if you want to seek the truth, go down the psychological route. As well as the occult route and the philosophy route, fine, but go down a psychology route because the stuff that you will learn about yourself and about society in general is fantastic. But getting back to the idea that people are making excuses because they don't want to change. People make excuses because they basically what's happening is we are now falling back into an emotional state. And this is all bias, all cognitive biases and all mind traps are basically shortcuts in thinking that are erroneous and lead us to bad conclusions, right? If in effect it is the opposite of critical thinking. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is I think practically everyone does it these days, but I've noticed it especially in truther groups, especially in religious groups. And this is not an attack on any religious group or any religion in particular. So I've got a challenge for anyone listening. Go and have a look at the cognitive biases and mind traps and just go and see how many you've fallen into, or just by religion alone. What it teaches you to do is to, again, it's a shortcut in thinking, right? It's bypass that to jump to that conclusion, right? It's let's ignore this so we can cherry pick our favorite bits, and that leads to things coming out illogically, irrationally, and it's a very easy fix. All you've got to do is become aware of it. I mean, one example that's thrown around a lot at the minute is the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Whereas people their level of confidence in certain subjects is sky high. They think they're experts, when actually the opposite is usually true. Their level of knowledge and information, and it's very low compared to what they think it is. When we're dealing with the religious mindset, the reason why people are getting angry, the reason why people get angry at your videos and at my comments, and believe me, the amount of discussions that I have with people, or the comments that I've had on certain videos that I've done, it's an emotional reaction, right? So this is effectively what you've done. If we were dealing with this from a purely intellectual standpoint, you could be compassionate, you could be loving about this, you could be caring. I think you've got the best of intentions doing these videos. I have the best of intentions questioning all this stuff and writing about it, as do you and many others that have been doing this for a while. But we always seem to be able to offend, and I'm sorry, Christians, you do seem to be the most offendable group. And again, that's not an attack; it's an observation. Christians are very, very offendable. The reason for that is we are attacking them in their most primal belief, right? We've questioned their most primal conditioned mindset, and it's causing an emotional reaction. Their response to you saying, right, I've read that passage in the Bible and it's evil. I've read that passage in the Bible and it's contradictory, right? Their default to that, their cognitive bias is, well, he's wrong because I must be right because I believe. Well, all right, believe what you want. I don't care what your belief and opinions are. I want to know what the truth and facts are. I want to know what the evidence shows me. I want to know, I want to know. I don't know. Sorry, I don't want to care about your beliefs and your opinions. Everyone's got a belief, everyone's got an opinion, everyone's got an ideology. That doesn't make you right. That doesn't make your scriptures right. That doesn't make the religion or belief right. It just means that you have formed a bias and belief and an opinion. We've got to get past that. Stop reacting emotionally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There was a guy named Mel Fabregas who used to have a platform called Veritas Radio many years ago.
yeah,
Not sure if he's still going, but his slogan used to be, I want to believe, and the word believe was crossed out and replaced by no.
I like that.
That
I like
ties in
that.
with what you were saying there.
Well, it does very much.
One of the factors that originally inspired this series of videos was
Yeah,
discussions that you and I had had about
yeah,
how, unfortunately, I'd love to say the opposite, but what we're trained to think of as natural law, consequentialism, morality
mm,
doesn't seem to dish out the sort of consequences that we'd like to think it does. So we
yeah,
each know many people who are basically good people. They're trying
mm,
to do the right thing. They're
yes,
up against obstacles. It's a struggle for all of us. But within our consciousness is the desire to do the right thing. And we're doing our best with that.
yes,
What do we get in exchange for that kind of intent? A world of shit, a world of suffering.
yeah.
Everybody's suffering. And I've made the observation to you that suffering seems to be a bespoke process. We seem to have our
Doesn't it just?
personally
Yeah,
designed hell, which just applies to us. And it's circumstances in our lives that other people aren't going through, but we are.
yeah,
But the next person you speak to will be going through some shit that you're not, but they
yeah,
are. And it's just individually tailored to them. And it seems the more you try to do the right thing, the more you try to be moral, the more you try to help others and be good and make this world a better place, the more suffering you're going to reap as a result. There's a direct, observable, measurable process there, and anyone can do it. It's an experiment that you can
right.
go through yourself. And that's one of the things that inspired me to do that first video and start asking these
Yeah,
questions. So I want to ask you, when we think about the so-called elites of this world,
yeah,
the psychopaths, the Satanists
yeah.
who run everything, do you think they, as a huge group or network, have observed this dynamic and they realize that this reality actually rewards evil? It actually rewards behavior that causes suffering to others.
Right.
And they've chosen to align themselves with that type of behavior because they've realized this gives them an easier run through life than the rest of us. We're all trying to do the right thing and be good people and suffering as a result. When you think of these fuckers, they all seem to be literally getting away with murder, getting away with
Yeah,
genocide, getting away with stripping away people's rights, destroying nature, uh, and
en masse. Yeah,
and we don't notice them going through any suffering as a result. Obviously, we
right.
don't see what goes on behind closed doors, but they usually live to ripe old ages. That they're
Yeah,
walking around free men and women. Do you think this is because they have observed the rules of engagement in this reality and they've chosen to align themselves with suffering and they're actually being rewarded? They're being rewarded by the way this reality is constructed and the entity that constructed it for those types of behaviors because they're continuing the cycles of suffering and fear and everything that goes with it that this place was constructed to facilitate. What do you think
Right.
about that?
Okay. All right. So again, to your listeners, forgive me while I go off on another round the houses to get next door, right? Because that is probably one of the best questions. In fact, that's one of the best conversations we ever have. Whenever we get together, this comes up. And we mentioned it the other day about what was it about? Certain people tend to not get hit by this, right? And so that what I think we both observed is you can get people with the best of intentions, decent, good, loving, compassionate people who have got a standard of morality, who have got principles and rules and guidelines in life, and they go out with the very, very best of intentions. And the very thing that we see happening in the case that you mentioned there of a bespoke hell, specifically catered to making that particular person suffer. Yeah, I've seen that in your life. I've seen it in my life. My girlfriend is through periods of that. I've saw that. My friends in general go through that. The good ones. I've got some questionable friends, but the ones who are genuinely going out there trying to do the very best and have the very best of intentions, they're always telling me, I just can't get a break. I can't win. I cannot it's just constant. It's one thing after the next. Just as I climb back up again, just as I pull myself to my feet, something else comes and smacks me straight back down. I can't get a foothold, right? And I notice this in those that are the best of people. And I'd like to think that you and I are the best of people. I think many people probably disagree with me being one of them, but it is what it is. But what I've also noticed equally to that, and I think we drew a conclusion to this, was that I also know people who go through life smiling and they've got plenty of money. They get the girlfriends and the boyfriends with ease. They don't have that issue. They get the best cars. They get nice houses. They don't have to suffer. They don't have to struggle. Sometimes I've seen good luck literally fall on them, right? Just good fortune falls on these people. But I'm going to measure that out by saying that some of these people specifically are not good people. Some of these are very dark individuals who are very selfish, who don't give a damn about anyone but themselves, and yet good fortune seems to find them. And I've noticed that, and again, maybe that's not true in all cases, but it's true in a lot of cases. So if I could answer your question about the elites, do they know the rules? Yeah, I think they do, and I'll tell you why I think they know the rules, and I'll tell you why I think they break the rules. I think largely that if this place is the construct of a demiurge, or again looking at it from an atheist perspective, if there is no God, and I don't believe that, but if they do, if they believe that, if that's their mindset, if that's the way that they're going out into the world, then there is no karma for them. The
And you think
satanic
becomes fair
mindset.
game for them?
Well, this is the thing. This is exactly survival of the fittest mentality, isn't it? Right? This is, and again, survival of the fittest and Satanism, as in the Church of Satan, it goes hand in hand. It's the same mindset. The idea is that they can go out and do what they want, and if nobody stops them, if nobody prevents them from doing that, if people comply with their evil diktats, with their behaviors, if people don't stop them, if they comply with it, if they put up with it, if they go along with that, then in their minds, in their eyes, it's fair game. And guess what? They're predators. These people at the top, they're usually psychopathic. They're usually very well educated. They've got money from because they're in the right family and the right blood group, or they're in the right circles, or they're in the right business circles, right? They have a satanic, psychopathic mindset. And again, a caveat, I'm not saying that all people that are higher ups are evil. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is a lot of them are. The ones that are going out there making, worldwide agendas that we all have to comply with by force because we're all slaves to these people. Those people are evil. Those people are psychopaths. And these are the very same people that I think have been well trained in the occult, well trained in psychology, well trained in religion, in politics, education, economics, sciences. They've had the full array. They've had the best education going. They've had the best mentors. And by best, I mean intelligent. I don't mean the best people. I don't mean the most moral. I don't mean the most compassionate and good. They've had all the best of everything. And they've also got a ton of money to go with it. And they know they can get away with it because their buddies who are also in that line of thinking, they're also backing them up. And then their buddies are backing them up. And then they've got their police to back them up. And then they've got the courts to back them up. They've got the politicians to back them up. I mean, that's how they're getting away with it. Yeah, I do think they know the rules of the game. I think they know more than a lot of let's say good practitioners of the occult, right? I'm not going to go down a whole occult rationale here. There's nothing wrong with the occult. The occult literally means hidden from view, right? There's a whole field of study there, and it's not evil, which we've discussed in the past. But they are very well versed in it, both dark side and the light side of that particular subject area. They know psychology. They know how to manipulate. They know how to manipulate the markets. They know how to manipulate people's behaviors and get away with it. Of course, they do. Yeah, I do think they know the rules of the game. In short, and I don't think they pay the karmic consequences because the people in general allow them to get away with it. We have stood down. Apparently, we're the 99%, right? And I don't agree with that. I think we're more like the 30 or 40% at best. At best. But we allow them to do this, which allows it to perpetuate and get worse and perpetuate and get worse. And so in a satanic mindset, in a karmic mindset, all right, they let us get away with this, so we'll keep doing it. We'll keep doing it more. We'll do worse. We'll see what we can get away with. Does that answer the question?
Do you think it actually can be fixed? Because the title of one of my videos in
Yeah.
this series was "It's broke and it can't be fixed."
Right.
So if this realm is facilitated to reward evil and
Hmm.
oppressive behaviors towards
Yeah.
others, human slavery, and it's not the rules of the game, the computer code has
Hmm.
not been written to facilitate freedom and joy and
Right.
happiness. Can we actually win? That might sound like a very defeatist attitude, but think about it. If we're dealing with a reality which has been scripted and written
Hmm.
and coded in that way,
Yeah.
then maybe we can't actually throw off evil and live freely. We don't know how long this earth has been around, but it's a fucking long time. And
Oh, I
we're
agree
not
with that.
aware of any point in known human history where there's been freedom and abundance all over
Yeah.
the world. There's always war, there's always oppression, there's always poverty.
Yeah.
And it seems to be written into the very fabric of this reality that that has to be the case. So it makes me wonder, can it actually be fixed? I'm not saying we shouldn't
Right. Okay.
try, we should try,
Yes.
but I'm
Yeah.
wondering if we're just bashing our heads ultimately against a proverbial brick wall.
Right. Am I all right? Are you all right for me to go off another
Well, you may as
spiely
well. That's
rant?
what we're here for.
Right. Okay. Right. Short answer is yes, I do think it can be fixed, and I think it can be fixed very easily, with a caveat. So let me go off on my tangent. Right. First of all, right. So we are told in the history books that we've had 6,000 years of civilization. Right. We've got 6,000 years of history from beginnings in Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley in China. That we've grown up around those river regions, created civilizations, and we've been around roughly 6,000 years. I think we've been around longer than that. I think we've had many resets to set us back to default. However, let's assume that that's true. And again, I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I don't know everything. Sorry, folks. I know I know we get accused of either knowing everything or knowing nothing, but that's not it's not true in either case. But throughout that 6,000 years of history, in all regions of the world, what have we got? Suffering, misery, wars. My God, the wars are non-stop, right? We've got economic suffering, we've got health suffering, we've got barbarism, we've got I can't say certain words on YouTube, so but violations. Let's go for that. Let's go for violations, theft, fraud, deception, right? These are all causes and consequences of suffering. These are all society wide, and we can date this back right to day one, where we are told that the first cities cropped up in the river valleys. Okay, so ever since that. But then you've got to ask, well, okay, what could have been the cause of that? And if I might shamelessly plug my book here, I've written about this. So Fake Awake is looking at this kind of stuff and trying to draw a conclusion and an understanding, and then to give a solution to it. There's three things that are causal factors in all our suffering. One is religion. I don't mean spirituality. I don't mean God. I don't mean morality. I mean religion, a construct, a state fabricated set of rules and doctrines that favor the few, not the many, that keep people in a state of slavery. Two, statism. That is the belief in authority is justifiable. It's not. There is no one here that has the right to assert themselves over anyone else, right? If you have an authority, you have a slave in consequence. You've got a master and a slave. It's that simple. So statism teaches you that actually you are a slave because you've got a king and his nobles and his warriors looking down and trampling on you. The third thing is money, right? So money is the final cherry on the cake. That's the final bit that keeps us all enslaved in this system of suffering and misery. It keeps us in, you know, lack. We are constantly wanting, and if we're constantly wanting, then we've got this drive to constantly want more, right? We strive to always get out of that poverty trap. That some people take advantage of that. So to me, the cause of our suffering, the cause of our misery, all the wars that go back, religion, statism, and money, and the fix to that. And I've mentioned this on many podcasts with a mate of mine, Steve James. I'm hoping he's getting his name out there as well. We are trying like hell to get the solution out there, and people look at us as if to say, "Well, that's not the solution." Yes, it is. It is the solution. Mark Passio would agree that it's a solution. I'm hoping that many more people that are familiar, Larkin Rose, another example. The solution is very simple. First of all, get educated. I don't mean have a belief, have an opinion. I mean, no, genuinely go and learn as much as you can about everything, about statism, about religion, about money, about the economic system, about politics, especially about psychology and philosophy, and as much as you can get in there. I know people are short on time, but podcasts exist, audiobooks exist. You can do these things whilst you're walking to work, whilst you're at work a lot of the time. You can do these things whilst exercising. You can do these things whilst playing your computer games. You can have a constant influx of information, and it's not difficult, right? Learn this stuff first and foremost, but make sure that you are learning stuff that can be verified, that you can back up, that can be observed in reality as being true, right? Learn this stuff, really learn it. Once you've got the hang of that, learn how to think. And sorry, that sounds condescending. I don't mean to be condescending. Open your minds, open yourself to things that you wouldn't previously have considered. I mean, genuinely challenge your own beliefs, challenge your own opinions, challenge your own knowledge, because that's how you're going to grow. That's how critical thinking kicks in. So we need people now to start thinking critically. I know the movement thinks that they're thinking critically because they go against the mainstream. That's a bias. That's not critical thinking. Genuinely challenge yourself. Criticize your own thinking. Criticize everyone else's thinking, but in a most benevolent way. And here's the trick. Learn about morality, objective morality. And sorry, Mark, I've got to push somebody else here, and he was a friend of yours, Mark Passio. Whoever is not familiar with that man, go and learn everything that man can teach you. Learn about natural law, learn about morality, learn about the stuff that he's got on offer. It's necessary viewing. The way out of this, the solution, is to become moral. A moral man stands on principle, and he cannot be shifted. If you apply that to an entire population worldwide, if you get people to be educated, to think critically, to think open-minded, and then to stand on morals, actual morals, not morals that they find in scripture, not morals that their parents gave them, not morals that their school and their politicians gave them, that's subjective. That's relative. That's not morality. That's just somebody else's opinions and beliefs. I'm on about genuine, hard-pressed, objective morality. Know the difference between right and wrong and stand on principle. Sorry, Mark, just 2 minutes, right? Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. If we did that, if that spread, if people refused to comply with tyranny, if they did what was right because it was right, not and because it was necessary to do that, yeah, you'd see the elite start backing down. You would see the agenda start to crumble. You would see a genuine turn to a spiritual God, not a scripture-based demonic entity that people have used for their own purposes and advantages. That's the solution. Now ask me if people are going to do that, because I'm not convinced they will, but that is the solution, and it will lead to freedom, and freedom will lead you to happiness, and it will lead to largely an end of suffering and misery. I'm not saying it'll cut out all disease, but if we genuinely have good education and good morals, then we will genuinely have a better health system. We will genuinely have better education systems, better systems of buying and exchanging goods and taking care of the planet. We'll have that by default, but you've got to correct your morality. In order to correct your morality, you've got to correct your education. In order to correct your education, you've got to think critically and open-minded. You've got to challenge your own beliefs and opinions. Otherwise, we're going to get nowhere. We're just going to turn on each other and we're going to go off on 1,000,000,000 different tangents. We're not going to have any unity. We're not going to have any cohesion. We're done for. We can't allow that to happen. And we're there now. We're in an Orwellian society. We've got to stop this now. There's a solution. As far as I'm concerned, that's a solution. Sorry for the rant.
Up until recent times, I would have
Yeah.
been 100% on board with that.
Yeah.
That was my way of thinking for many, many years.
Yeah.
But I am seeing things differently now. And just to pick up on something that Mark Passio has often observed, and I've found a lot of value in his work as you
Yeah.
have,
Yeah. Absolutely.
he's often cited the example of when the American people threw off the oppressive yoke of the British Crown and won
Yeah.
back their independence. And he said that he's pointed out that it was only a very brief period of true freedom. It only
Yeah.
lasted for a few years before the
Yeah.
control system regained its hold on Americans through Freemasonry and
Yeah.
various other systems, and the people started to get enslaved through financial systems and everything else.
Yeah.
So the observation is that freedom is only very short lived. Now, what you've just outlined there as a hypothetical scenario, I truly,
Yeah. Yeah.
honestly wish that we could achieve that.
Yeah.
But I wonder if we ever did, and we probably won't if we're honest, if we ever did, would that also be a short lived experience? And would the way this realm
Right.
is constructed to facilitate all the suffering and the fear and stuff simply rearrange itself to eradicate that freedom and we would
Right.
end up where we started? I don't know how much freedom we might have, a few months, a
Yeah.
few years, but I personally feel that this realm, the coding of it, would
Yes.
rearrange itself and we'd be plunged right back where we were eventually. It would not be long lasting freedom. It would not be a persistent solution. And again, it's not me saying that we shouldn't try. Of course, we should try.
Yep.
But I wonder whether it would ultimately be an exercise in futility.
All right. Again, sorry if I seem as if I'm preachy. I certainly understand that. I understand exactly where you're coming from because I've looked at this from that perspective, and it's not a very nice outlook. But if you like, right, myself, like you, like many of the other people that we know, going back to the analogy that every time you get up, something comes and knocks you back down. Right, we've experienced that. It feels very personal. It feels very specific. Right, we've
Well, the
had that.
American Revolution is like a collective version of that process. It happened to a
Right,
whole community of people. Same process.
right. So what we're saying, and again, if we look at the other observation that bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people, let's take that back into the scenario as well. What I'm advocating for here is that we all become good, decent people who know the difference between right and wrong, who are properly educated and can think critically. The idea is that we are good people, right? And so what you're saying is that the encoding to this matrix, this world, this universe, is that if we were to do that en masse, then the proverbial shovel from above is going to come and smack us all down, and that might be the case. That might be the case. Um, and I can't answer that. I can't say that's not the case or that is the case. I don't know. I suspect there's always going to be something to come and challenge us, right? So even if we did do that, even if we did manage to throw off the yoke of tyranny and achieve that and come together in unity and cohesion and give it a damn good shot, there's always, if we look at psychopathy, there's always going to be a small percentage of the population that's just born that way, right? They are born manipulators. They are cold and ruthless, not necessarily evil, not necessarily bad people. I'm not saying that all psychopaths are bad. What I'm saying is that there's always going to be that element in society. And that element in society is always going to try and find the other elements in society that will back it up, that will be subservient to that, because they want control, they want power, they want authority, and they want to assert their dominance. They are the supreme alpha. They're the apex predators, except, they don't care. That's the issue here. So if we can If we can bear that in mind, if we sorry to keep prattling on, mate. If we did manage it, I suspect there would be a challenge to it. There's always going to be a challenge to it. But if we could maintain our morality, if we could maintain our critical thinking and our, correct education, are we all right? Are we good? Yeah. If we could do that whilst being aware that there's always going to be an element of sabotage, an element that's going to try and undermine us, then at least we'd be aware. We'd have that. Obviously, if there's something a bit more divine going on, if there's something, natural disasters, you can't really hold that as to blame for punishing good people, if that makes sense.
Acts of God, don't you
Acts
know?
of God, acts of God. And again, if this is a realm that's controlled by a malevolent entity, a demon, a demiurge, and again, I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't. And what I'm saying is, it definitely feels as if you're right. Right? I can say that from a personal perspective. It feels like what you're saying is right. That's why I resonate with your videos. I often find myself watching your videos, just nodding to everything you're saying. It's like, yep, 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 all of that.
Well, a lot of
But
people are
equally,
telling me that now, which is very
yeah,
gratifying. A lot of people are finding value in these messages because so
good.
few people are prepared to discuss these things and even ask the questions. So at this point, I'd like to read out some of this feedback that I get. So
Yeah,
this is
please,
like
yeah,
a
let's go for it.
addition
Let's
for
go
all
for
these
that.
videos.
Yeah.
So I've got a few messages here that are quite bleak. So we'll get those out of the way first,
Let's
and
do
then we'll
them
move
first.
on to a bit more hopeful stuff. So there's this guy who's been messaging me by email, and I don't tend to use names because people don't
Yeah,
necessarily like
that's
their
fair
names being
enough.
put out.
Yeah.
But this guy corresponds with me regularly. And he recently wrote, when you become fully aware and awake to the unbearable level and extent of the distortion, perversion, evil, and all the hellish suffering, torture, abuse, trauma, monstrous cruelty, atrocities, including the massacre of innocents, there is no explanation that could ever justify it or make it acceptable. This world and cosmos shouldn't have existed whatsoever. It has to collapse and burn down for good. Cheerful fellow. But I totally get where he's coming from.
Well,
There's a guy, I'll just read out these as
yeah,
well.
yeah, of course,
There's a
yeah.
guy on YouTube whose channel I found. He goes by the name of Mark Mund Spilly. So it's MarcMundSpilli. And I've found a lot of value in his videos. He does monologues. He doesn't appear in vision, it's just audio only.
Yeah.
And he crops up with some comments. So he said, life is torture, but it seems that is only truly evident to very few minds who can honestly comprehend it without self deception and mental anesthesia. Every pain, every suffering, every problem, it's all been repeating for thousands of years without fail, dealing with these fucking torture devices known as the flesh body. Most ignore it, shrug it off with the cliche, that's just life. No, that's not going to cut it. Absolutely unacceptable. No one willingly puts up with torture for a single 5 minutes, let alone for decades, and then be expected to keep putting up with it to the very bitter end. It's equally grotesquely absurd. Life is not good, not a gift, not the creation of a good, loving God. And those who choose to self exit do so understandably. Fuck this place. That's how I feel about it all. Reply to that, somebody called Triumvirat 000 said, exactly. Life is not a gift. It is a grotesque sentence carried out in slow motion. This guy can write, I tell you. A biological torture chamber on repeat, dressed up with fake smiles and hollow distractions so the prisoners don't claw the walls too soon. Every cycle of pain, every humiliation, every decay of the flesh is not an accident. Flesh is the perfect shackle. It rots, it bleeds, it starves,
Yeah.
it ages, and yet it traps consciousness long enough to drain it dry. People say that's just life, which is Stockholm syndrome on a cosmic scale. You wouldn't force a
Oh, I like
dog.
that.
Yeah. You wouldn't force a dog to endure the cancer, dementia, and decay that humans are expected to accept. Yet here, billions march to the slaughterhouse one by one, pretending there's some meaning in their chains. There is no loving God behind this, only indifference at best, malevolence at worst. If there were a true gift, it would be the release, not another round of this carnival of agony. And the herd keeps smiling, shopping, breeding, and scrolling TikTok on their way to the abattoir. I'll read one more reply out. This is from Mark Mund Spilly again, who
Okay.
says, I honestly appreciate your lucidity. And yes, there is absolutely no good reason for this nightmare. None. The endless routines, the suffering monotony, the daily grind of suffering repeated on autopilot for decades, it all adds up to nothing but absurd cruelty. And when you look at nature itself, nothing but tearing, ripping, devouring, the eternal slaughter of life,
Yeah.
feeding on life, it makes even less sense. If this was meant to be creation, it's the most grotesque design imaginable. What's even more maddening is the sheer depth of the brainwashing. The programming of the herd is so complete, so total, that they celebrate their own captivity and this grotesque mask of humanity. So I'll leave that one there. But he made a very good
Okay.
point that if a dog was aging and was diseased and was suffering, it's generally accepted that the kindest thing to do is to put it down, put it out
Yeah.
of its misery. Yet with humans, we don't accept that that's the kind thing to do. No, no. If you're unfortunate enough to get some debilitating illness, it might cause you intense pain and suffering for decades, 30, 40, 50
Yeah.
years. And yet, the thing to do in polite society is to allow that to continue. So he's just highlighting the double standards there between how we would treat a pet and how we would treat a relative. And there's a lot there. I appreciate there's a lot there that I read out, but any
Hey, no, I
reactions
mean,
to that?
no, honestly, I mean, so all three comments are exceptionally well written. Again, they're all the points. I get this. The points are valid. Their observations are valid. Um, but I would again, I'll try and balance that out with, yes, that's true from the perspective that we're at now. It's 2025. We've been through hell. We are still going through hell, especially in the UK. It's like, we're literally creating Orwellian society by the minute, and people don't seem to be consciously aware of it. It's crazy. From that perspective, yeah, I get all of those comments. However, what I would ask is, if you're and this is not an attack on the comments are great. Whoever, the people who wrote them, they're great. I have no problem whatsoever. However, take them back maybe 40 years, 30 years, take them back 70s or 80s period, right? Where things were a little bit better. They flowed a bit better. We could enjoy life a bit more sunshine. We had a bit more economic freedom. I'm not saying it was a paradise back then. It wasn't. However, compared to what it is now, we had freedom. People would treat each other better. We had more positivity in the world. We had more community. We had more camaraderie between people. We had family units. We had men and women treating each other better, I think, than they do now. Would his opinions still be the same? And yeah, you could say that's a subjective, relative view based on his personal perspective. Yeah, okay, it is subjective and relative, but
Sorry, just
um,
just to jump
yeah,
in
yeah,
there, just with
yeah,
an
yeah,
observation. In
yeah.
the 70s and 80s, of course, we didn't have the internet.
True.
Therefore, people didn't
Mm,
have access to the sort of
yeah.
knowledge we now do. So I think
Yes.
his comments are coloured by the fact
Yeah.
that he's been able to do research as we all can,
Yeah.
and we can better comprehend what we're up against, the true
Yeah.
nature of what's going on here, which people in the 70s and 80s didn't.
Yeah.
So you could say they were a bit more ignorant in terms of their knowledge, but it made them happier because they didn't
Yes.
know all
Yeah.
this stuff.
This.
That's the
This.
distinction, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, actually, I mean, that's a good point. That's another thing we discussed the other day. It was like, well, I mean, there is such a thing as blissful ignorance. I'm not promoting ignorance at all. I think ignorance is the worst thing. I think it's the original sin. I think it is the sin of sins, right? However, when I use the example of bad people being rewarded, certain normies out there, they're just blissfully going through life and they're smiling and they're all right. And it doesn't matter what's happened to them or what happens in the world, they're all cheerful and then they get, they're just flying through life. That's that's blissful ignorance being rewarded. I mean, so from that perspective, yeah, I mean, it does seem that ignorance is blissful because you don't have to deal with the pain of understanding and knowing what's going on. You don't have to deal with trying to figure out why the world is evil because you're not aware of it fully. You're not in that state of mind. And so the internet, if you look at it, it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, one, it's brought us together in one way, and it's certainly allowed us to get information out there to understand a lot. I mean, the daily influx of information that I have, it's a constant flow. I've always got information going in, and I love that. Sometimes it can get a bit heavy. Sometimes but mostly I'm learning constantly. It's just a constant stream of. It's good. They're trying to stop that. They're trying to censor that. So if we look at the internet for the good things, information and being able to communicate like we are doing, and for the yeah, that's fantastic. The downside of it is it's one hell of a tool for programming and conditioning us. It's entrapped us. That's why they call it a web. That's why it's a net, right? It's a world wide web. They've trapped us. Things like social media, you want to, you want to talk about the devil? Look at social media, right? I mean, talk about selfishness and self-righteousness and self-serving satanic mindsets. If I could take anything away from the internet, it would be things like TikTok. I'm not saying I would stop people's ability to communicate and join groups and so I'm not about that. But things like Facebook and TikTok, wow, they've made narcissists out of existing. I mean, they've taken a whole population of normal people and turned them into robotic, hive-minded narcs. I mean, it's horrible,
TikToxic.
right?
It's
Oh,
awful.
that's brilliant. You need to copyright that. TikToks, I love it.
TikToxic.
That's great. That's great. That's the downside of the internet. That's the downside of technology. I think this whole smart agenda, the is an acronym. I think I'm saying that correctly anyway. I think it's an acronym, SMART, right? The whole technocratic infrastructure, the towers, and I won't go into wording for obvious reasons, your smartphones, your TVs, your laptops, all of this infrastructure, all of this technological infrastructure, I think number one, it's watching us. I think it's been watching us for a very long time. I think it's listening to us. I think it's recording us. I think it's sticking all of everybody's conversations, internet searches, behaviors, patterns, interests, all of that. It's collating it and it's sticking it in a database somewhere. And the AI is being programmed now to filter through that and to manipulate us through that. I genuinely think that's what's happening here. I think this is why people are now turning on each other. I think this is why we've got a lack of critical thinking. I think social media and the smart grid has massive amounts of blame for that particular outcome. And I think that is also dragging us down into a negative outlook, into a negative perception, because it's bombarding us constantly, right? We are constantly being hammered by darkness, by negativity, by evil, by suffering, by doom mongering, and people are doing this themselves. I know I've got plenty of friends who sit on the phone all day, doom, 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 and then they're depressed. Well, of course you're depressed. Put your phone down. Go out there and walk in the streets. Go and have a walk. Go and meet somebody and have a discussion with them. Connect again. If you're just going to sit there and remind yourself as to how bad things are, guess what? You're going to get depressed. You're going to get anxious, and life's not going to be very pretty. Stop
Lose the
it.
doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling. Yeah, TikToxic, mate. I love that. It's great. I do. I love
Yeah, I like doom
that.
scrolling. Don't know where that came from. Right, so I've got some more comments here, and I'm going to
Please, yeah.
finish
Let's go
finish
for it.
on this.
Yeah,
So this is
yeah.
somebody else. This is a guy that I correspond with on Facebook, and he's got a bit of a more positive slant on things, I guess. So he says it's not really a soul trap; it's more of a soul trick. A trap would mean we're powerless victims locked up against our will. A trick is different. It's all about illusion, distraction, and misdirection. Like a magician's sleight of hand, it only works if we don't see through it. Once awareness cuts through the trick, the game is over. Subliminals are a good example. The subconscious mind always picks them up, but the conscious mind doesn't, and that gap is where the trick slips in. The second your conscious awareness catches it, the illusion falls apart. Reality works the same way. Nothing's truly trapping us. It only seems that way when we don't notice. Awareness is the light that exposes the trick. The subconscious already knows, but the real shift comes when the conscious awareness sees it too. When they align, the spell is broken. And this is what I talk about when I uh,
Okay.
expose hand signals and these methods of communication that these occultists use and subliminals and music videos and things like that. So, one final comment from this same guy. If this really is a simulation, then people assume there must be a prime reality sitting behind it. My old 3D way of thinking imagined that place as having the same kind of things we see here, like mountains, nations, roads, cities, but now I see it differently. The original field isn't another version of Earth. It's infinite awareness itself, boundless, borderless, with no countries, no maps, no division. What we call landscapes, nations, wars, and cities are just constructs inside the simulation. They're symbols, projections, not eternal realities. It could be like logging into a VR game. You put on the headset, and suddenly there are mountains, roads, and conflicts. But none of that actually exists in the living room you're sitting in. The prime reality isn't full of copies of game levels. It's the awareness of the player who exists beyond them all. So this Earth isn't mirrored somewhere else. It's a copy illusion that only exists inside the simulation. In truth, we're infinite awareness, and outside of this game, those constructs don't even exist. So I think if there's a
Yeah.
positive slant to be putting on all this stuff that we talk about, that's probably it. And I'm always happy to end on some vaguely uplifting
Yay.
outlooks. So I'm quite aligned with that. And I'm also aligned with the idea that though it can be bleak and dispiriting to look at all this information, perhaps it's the key to us getting out of here. Perhaps becoming
Yeah.
aware, becoming informed, becoming wise to the way the game is played is going to be our ticket out of here, because we're going to use that wisdom and that knowledge that we've accumulated during these bleak times as our way out
Yeah.
when that opportunity comes. So that's my final two penneth there.
Can I comment on that last video that I mean it's effectively the virtual reality. So I mean I've said to a lot of people that I go for matrix theory or not what's the word? So like I do subscribe to the idea
Simulation.
that we are say again, mate.
Simulation theory.
Simulation theory. Thank you. Yeah, to a large extent, yes, I do. I think it's a very, very complex simulation, and I think it's probably more complex than we would probably lay it out in a narrative or a film. But anyway, regardless, I do subscribe to it, and I think that's probably one of the best ways of looking for it. It's almost as if when you put that reality on your headset, if you like, your VR headset, maybe we're in this because that's what we're most drawn to. Maybe this is what stimulates us. Maybe this is what sort of our energetic match, if you like. We just for whatever reason we've put this particular reality headset on because we there's something here that we need to garner from that. We need to learn something from that, or maybe our soul is yearning for something from that particular reality. Maybe it just needs to experience it. And again, the comment's fantastic, and I would definitely I agree with a lot of what he said. In fact, I agree with most of what he said in that it certainly resonates with me. Again, it's a possibility, is it not?
Yeah.
It's a good analogy.
We'll take anything we can get at this point.
Just a
All
bit.
right, well, we'll leave it there. So this was Devlin meets Lucius. So stand by for the comments. The devil and
Oh God,
Lucifer.
I know.
They'll be coming. But other than that, thanks for coming on today. Great discussion, and
Thank you
see you
very
for
much.
God 21.
There you go. Well, I look forward to that. So yeah, hey, thanks for having me on, mate. And again, can I just leave an outward comment for this, just to
Yeah, go ahead.
try and put a positive slant on things? It's so right. I've been on a podcast with a guy called Paul English and Eric on Essex lately, and one of the things that we've discussed on there recently, I go on there quite often if anyone's interested. But we discussed the Mouse Utopia, Universe 25 from John Calhoun. I don't know whether you're familiar with that. Right. Okay. It basically this scientist he put a construct together and he put some mice in there to breed them and see how their societal construct would develop. Okay, so we basically provided everything that they would need: their food, their bedding, water. It was all mapped out and laid out for them. Effectively, if you contrast that to, let's say, communism, shared resources and everything. Anyway, I'm going to cut a very long story short. What he found during his experiments is that the mice always turned on themselves. So in the center of the complex, it would be a bloodbath. It'd be complete barbarism. Like the mothers would turn on the children. The male mice would fight the other male mice. They would murder indiscriminately. They would eat and feast on the other mice. It's a bloodbath. Certain ones, referred to as the beautiful ones, would then they could see what's going on and it's like, right, sod this, we're out. So they would go to the outlying parts of the construct and just live out the rest of their lives there. Eventually, it descended into anarchy and it consumed itself. The construct failed. Anyway, right. What Calhoun then did is he decided, right, okay, what's missing? He tried to figure out what the missing point was. Like, why did they do this repeatedly? I think he repeated it 5 times, something like that. And so he figured, okay, maybe it's because the mice don't have purpose, right? So maybe things are too easy for them. Maybe giving them everything they want is the problem. Guess what? He allowed them, they were still catered for, but they had to go for it. They had to work for it. They had to figure out things for themselves. The mice had to figure out how it was done to go searching for their food, to go searching for their mates and their bedding and stuff like that. And it gave them a sense of purpose. It gave them a drive. It gave them a motivation, and it succeeded. So what I'm saying is, at the minute, if we look at society, we are in the mouse dystopia. We're in the bad version, and it's going to descend into anarchy. And I don't mean anarchy. Okay, let's call it chaos. I think chaos is a better word for that. It is going to descend into a bloodbath unless we become aware of it, right? So why not end on this by finding our purpose again? Instead of always doom scrolling, looking at the negatives, looking at why we should turn on people, looking at why we disagree with people, and oh my God, he said this and it goes against my opinion and it goes against my belief, and oh, he must be evil, and he must be the devil because it's got the devil in his name, and all right, start all that, forget all that. Why not look at the good side? Why not try and use acts of kindness? Why not go out into the world with a bit of purpose, with the idea of, okay, maybe we are doomed, maybe this is a construct, maybe this is hell. Does that mean that we can't try and improve it? Even if we fail, should we not try and go out there and say, okay, well, regardless, I am still a decent person. I'm just still a decent human being. Just because the world's descending into chaos doesn't mean I have to follow suit. So what I would ask you listeners is, especially those who are offended, ask yourself why you. I'm not. It's not an attack. Ask yourself why are you getting offended at things? Why are you getting offended if you hear people like Mark having a look at your religion and saying it doesn't make sense? Why are you getting offended at certain comments on the internet? Ask yourself that. It's an emotional reaction because you're not thinking critically. And I'm not saying you're never thinking critically. I'm saying there is a psychological field of study which suggests that actually, if you're emotionally reactive, your critical function is it's dormant. Try and change your perspective. Go out there, and as much and as difficult as it is right now, don't comply with evil and do what you can to put a bit of good in the world. Try and get purpose back. Try and spread that purpose. Please try and spread a little bit of hope instead of doom scrolling. If that thing in your hand is dragging you down, put it down. Put it down. Limit your time in it. There you go. So apart from that, thank you for listening to my prattlings and rants, and it's been a real pleasure to come on with you, Mark.